Goulakos and Justin Bernardo. They're going to be explaining how to develop your very own Windows 8 phone application. And they're going to, this is a part 2 of our series with Microsoft, and there's pizza in the back and also free headphones. There's still a few pairs. Basically today, what you're going to be walking away with is some of the ways and methods of how to, build your own phone application. And we're also going to tell you guys how to publish what you've created. If you have any problems with installation, definitely talk to us afterwards. But they're definitely going to go over through how to make an interesting, cool phone app that does interesting things using C# and XAML. XAML is Extensible Application Markup Language, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. And C# basically will dictate how that layout works. And today I know one of the things we're going to be going over is how to change views and pages. So that'll be key to build on the knowledge that you guys have gained from the last lecture. And if you didn't attend, this will be all new material, so make sure to pay attention, and I'll leave it to them.
All right, welcome guys. Thanks for coming to number 2 of our series on Windows 8. Raise your hand. Did you come to last week's lecture? Okay, not bad, not bad. That's good. Got some old faces. So let me show you what we're going to build today. This is our app for today. For those of you who came last week, you'll recognize we have a pivot page. You can swipe left and right to view more of the UI. So first and second up here, that's the pivot page. So what we've added this week is text input, but it's not just about inputting the text, we're also manipulating the strings and passing them to a new page. And that's a new topic for this week, navigating between different application pages. So let me just, type some random stuff in here. Whatever, Teriyaki. Whatever, some random stuff. Okay, press next. Boom. Okay. Well, if it wasn't rotated so much, you'd see that this top text block at the top has been rotated, and it's a copy of the string. The 14 here is the length of the string.
The amount of letters.
The amount of letters with them combined. The one below that is just the first word of that string, which is separated by a space. And then the bottom is that entire combined string reversed. So we're going to show you a few different ways of manipulating strings, as you can see here, and passing them between views. Also, you may have noticed that there's a nice smooth transition between the views. Like, you can see it's kind of on a turnstile, and it swivels, and it looks nice. So we'll be going over that too, which makes your app look polished and like the stock Windows Store apps. So, all right. Now, Justin will lead off. He'll make this app disappear and recreate it from scratch.
So now that you've seen what the finished product is going to be, I'm just going to close everything here and just start from scratch, see how we get there. So, let me just close solution. Everyone start from new project. We don't really have to make it a pivot page, but we did, just so we can show you just where you would remove the num list that you have there. So I start with Windows Phone Pivot App. You can change the name here, but for now we're just going to keep it as Pivot App 2. I'm saying this for OS 8. So as you see here, you just have a basic pivot app that has a bunch of stuff inside by default. So we're just going to go into the XAML and remove that right now. On the list. Here it is. Delete that, and now it's gone. In place of that, I'm going to create a grid. So that way I can place multiple items in there. And rather than write every item using XAML, I'm just going to go into the toolbox and add the three elements I will need. The button and the 2 text boxes. See how it was generated right here? It's the text box, but notice that there is no name. You could go into the properties and change the name there, but sometimes it's actually easier just using the XAML file right there and just write in what you want to call this. I'm just going to call it string 1 text box. And then I'm going to go into the properties and remove the text. I'm going to create a second text box. Give this one a name. Name it string 2. Perfect. Go into the properties and remove the text. Open up the toolbox again, and we're going to look for the button. Let's put it in here. I'm just going to eyeball it rather than. There we go. Change the content of the button to next, and we'll give this a name. We'll call this button data transfer. Okay. We're going to Solution Explorer. And before I actually start programming that button, I'm going to add a page. So on your main solution here, where it says Pivot App 2, I will right click it and go to Add New Item. What I'm adding is a Windows Phone portrait page, and it's called Page 1. Normally you would give this a more descriptive name as to what's going to be on this page, but for now I'm just going to keep it as Page 1.0. I'm going to add it. And this is what shows up. So now let's just make it navigate. I double click on the button to open up the data transfer click method. It's by default on the button when you create it using the toolbox. So, and if you double click it, if you made like the button on XAML and you double click it, it creates it for you. So it kind of solves some of your issues right there. And right now what I'm going to do is just navigate. Navigation, so just navigate. And since I called it Page 1, I'm just going to create this string, because this is like the location of it. By default, the navigation service requires a URI. You can just hard code it using just what I did creating a string, and it looks like a string, but it's really the placement of that data in your app. And then as a result, you need a URI kind, and for this we're going to call it relative. Oh, URI. So now when I click this button, it should navigate me to that page. So let's run it and test it out. Perfect. See, it wasn't as fluid as the finished app. That actually requires a little bit more coding, but we got the concept down right now. I press next, it goes to the next page. So now, on to page 1 example. Whoops. It's going to have to load again, but okay. On the page 1 example, I'm actually going to add a couple of fields. So I'm going to add a text block. By default, your portrait page on Windows Phone, like default app they make, comes with a grid, so you don't actually have to code in for the grid. It already assumes that you want to have as a grid. So I'm going to put this as a text block. And in this text block, I'm going to name it combine string. Go on to the properties and remove the text. So it's empty. Now on the main page now, I want to transfer over what I write in here to that next page. So I'm going to be able to do that right now. So I'm going to create a string called combined and make it equal to the text inside the two text boxes. And in this URI, what I'm going to do is actually, okay, I actually have to create a new URI outside. So what I'm going to do is instead of having this called in here, I'm going to get rid of it and show you how to make one a URI outside of the navigation service. I'm going to call it data URI. Okay. Yeah, explain the screen.
Okay. Just in this coding, I can explain a little what's going on. So instead of putting the new URI all inside the one navigation service.navigate line, which would make it really wide and then you have to wrap to multiple lines, he's making a new URI object outside of that line, and then he's going to pass it in as the parameter, which it was doing before, except split into two lines makes it a little more readable. Secondly, he wants to pass a few parameters as part of the URI to the next page, because that's the way that the next page is going to have access to the text that was entered on the first page. You need a way to pass it through, because they're different classes, so they're not going to know about each other's strings without you coding a way to do that. So what he's doing is he's combining the two text boxes strings with a space in the middle. That's why it goes plus space and then plus the other string. And then he's using the format method of the string class, and that allows you to kind of imagine everything after the first argument of the format function gets substituted into the first argument of that string, which is a string, that slash page1.xaml combined equals. And then you use a special notation. You use curly braces and a number. And the format function goes to the string, sees, oh, okay, so it reads literally page1.xaml, but then it gets to those curly braces, and it knows right there that it should substitute in the next parameter of the formatting for that. So that string named combined will get copied into the page1.xaml string in the place where that 0 is. So that's how you can add multiple parameters to your URI, and then that gets sent over to the next page.
This is actually what's highlighted right now is the string key. This is what you'll be calling on page 1 once you're navigated to that page to actually extract the data as a result of navigation. So.
I'll go through that. Just already a hard job of coding, so I'll keep explaining. He switched over to page 1, which is the destination page of this navigation structure that we have between the first and the second. Well, the line was there. Now it's gone.
So
No, it's okay. So, yeah, it was actually in the wrong place. So, it's making a new method. He's not making a new method. He's more overriding. So you can see there, he's using the override keyword. A method of the class above that page 1 is inheriting from. And the gist of this method is it gets called when the page has been navigated to. So what the system, the underlying system, is giving it these messages saying, hey, a page just navigated to you. You should run this code to prepare yourself, like prepare your view, and in our case, copy in the strings that were passed from the first view to the second view. So this is getting called when that event happened. This method is just, it's required of every method of this type. And Visual Studio is nice, and if you saw it generated it for you. So you should keep that line there based on navigated to, but you should just keep it there, ignore it, have it as the first line of the method. No. The next line is where our case comes in. Combined string, if you remember, was the name, the x:\name of the text block in the XAML. Can you switch to that?
Yep.
This is the x name of that. This text block, which is where that combined string is going to be written to. And that's how that x:\name is how C# refers to objects in XAML. Or else we wouldn't be able to refer to it by name. We wouldn't be able to refer to it by its text attribute. So that's what's happening there. Lastly, he's setting the text attribute of combined string, which in turn displays text on the screen. He is retrieving the attribute of query string of navigation context. Let me explain that. Navigation context is an inherited object from the underlying system. We don't actually, truly, I don't really know where it comes from. It's in an inherited class up in the hierarchy.
In the framework?
Yes, yes. And then that object has an attribute called query string. Already parsed through representation of that URI that we had made on the previous page, page1.xaml, question mark, and then the rest of the thing that was generated by string.format. We can go back to that later, just for reference. But actually, yeah, can you go back to that? Okay, the old page. This can be whatever you want. It's kind of a key and then a value. You can imagine this combined is a name that you're giving a label, sort of, to the data that you're passing. So in our case, we label it, this is the combined string, so we call it combined, and then followed by an equal sign. And then whatever is after the equal sign gets assigned to the name combined. So then we can refer to that data that was passed by calling, oh, I want the combined attribute, and then it will return the stuff substituted into this 0 thing right here, which in turn is the combined string, which was created up here. So in the other file, switch back to that. Now we refer to it, we ask it for it, can I get the combined string? And then that in turn will return to the text attribute of the text block that data that was assigned the name combined. So I don't know if that's clear for you guys. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. I hope it was clear enough. And we can do that for each set of data we slap onto the end of the URI. So we can ask it, I want the combined attribute, I want the length attribute, you'll see just some code that. I want any number of things, as long as the string is, it will get parsed through by the operating system, and then you will refer to it by its key name, which is combined. Yes. Okay, we're going to go. We're testing the app now. Since we have the code to pass it between the two views, now we're going to see, will this actually show up on the second view? And crossing our fingers, it does. It does up here. This is my name, actually. So yeah, that part works. That's good.
So now we're going to actually add more to that URI, more to that string, so we can get more data from it. So things we may want to know about the string would be the length of the string or the amount of letters in the combined string. So to do that, we actually have to code a little bit for it. So what I'm going to do is combine length and what this is doing is getting the combined length of the combined string, which is string1 textbox.text plus a space plus string2 textbox.text. Now, since we want it to be the amount of letters in the combined string, we will have to subtract 1 because we're also adding this space, which adds to the character length. So now we have the combined length. We can actually add that here. And I'm going to call it
What we did here is, so it would really suck if you were only limited to one key and one value for a URI. So fortunately, there's a syntax to add as many as you want based on, you probably wouldn't go adding in an entire file into this one string. But you can add several, enough that you need to. There are also better ways to do this, but we can talk about that after if you need that to answer the presentation. There are better ways to pass data between pages, but this is the simplest. Anyways, by using this ampersand symbol, we're signaling that, okay, let's start a new key and value for this string that's going to get passed to the next page, and we will be able to retrieve that from the string. So now we have just made a new key, combined length, and that's the result of this combined length integer statement, and calculating how many letters are in the combined string. That's getting passed also, and it will have the name combined length, and then it will have a number. You see what he did again? He used the format method of the string class here. He is using a substitution 1, and that refers to the third argument of the format method. And because computers start counting from 0, it starts at 0 instead of 1. So that one's 0 and that one is 2. Yeah, okay. Very good, I'm glad you did this. If you were to do 1 here, it would give you this nonsensical string here. So you can see it goes in order. This string is string 0, this is string 1, this is string 2. And they all go in a line in the arguments of the format method. So he added a new key and value pair.
So what I'm going to do now is add another text block to display the amount of letters in whatever we type. And we'll give this a name. And we'll name it combine the length block. Make it a little bigger. And I'm going to remove the text inside the block. So we run it, it should show the length as well, the amount of letters as well. Oh, that's it. Oh, that's okay. Here you go. Okay, that's right. There we go. Yeah, that was my bad.
Now it should, hopefully, now we're using the first and second keys of that query string. Object navigation context that we saw earlier. So now we should have the combined string itself and its length. 13 characters.
That's like 13 letters. This isn't the length of the string, it's just the amount of letters.
For those of you is anyone following along? Anyone? How's the pace? Are we behind or? Okay, good.
Now I'm going to actually show you something neat with Visual Studio Hub. It actually has a built-in character array. So I'm going to actually create an array that I want to pass into the put into the next page. I'm actually creating a reverse string right now, where right now I'm trying to get the reverse spelling of everything that's put into. So let me create another string. And then I want to take this and bring it into my string format. I'm going to create another text block. I'm going to empty it out. And then I'm going to put some data into it. Notice that it's 0, 2, 1. It really doesn't matter which one you're trying to call, as long as you realize that this is 0, 1, and 2. So it's going to, the combined is going to get the combined length is going to get the combined length, and the reverse is going to get this reverse string. And notice that it actually reversed it for you. Now, this is just different ways to show how you can actually concatenate all your data into different strings and then bring it out in your next page. But obviously there's nicer ways to format it. So Peter can actually go over the showing you how to mess around with the properties and making it look nicer and making it more fluid.
All right. So we have an app that can navigate between pages. It can pass data between the pages, and it can do some string manipulation. It's pretty good. We got about 3/4 of that done in terms of complexity. But what's missing? We're missing the fluid transitions, and we're also missing the visual effect that we had, that fun kind of rotation effect on the top text field that you saw in the example. So, yeah, let's just do those now. I will start with the transitions. Now, I'm only going to do one style of transition, and it's called turnstile. You can imagine kind of 2 pages going like this. So that's the name of the transition we'll be doing. So the code for the transitions, and a bunch of other features of Windows apps are not in Visual Studio by default in the SDK. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a package called Windows Phone Toolkit to the project. It'll get downloaded from the internet, and then let us have access to a new set of libraries that will, for one, let us do transitions. So I'm going up to the project menu. I'm going down to Manage NuGet Packages. And if it's not selected already, go on the left and click Online. And then go up to the search box up here. And then search for WP Toolkit. Now, just enter it. It'll go online, search a little. You want the first, or it might not be the first result depending on what you type, but it's going to be Windows Phone Toolkit. So press install. It's an easy process. Download in a couple seconds, install itself. So that's step 1 to getting transitions going. Close the NuGet package manager down here. Get rid of that. Okay. There are a couple other setup steps. Now, there are actually 2 ways to go about this transition goal. We could do it in C#, or we can accomplish it in XAML. I'll be going over the XAML method. There are 2 ways. They do the exact same thing. You could argue which one is neater or more readable, but I think the XAML one is pretty neat, and once you do it, you can keep it out of the way of your C#, which that's an added benefit that might be useful. So I'll be doing it in XAML. The first step actually is not involved with XAML. Go to the your Solution Explorer on the right over there, where all your project files are at. Open that up, and then you'll see app.xaml. Right? Click on the little disclosure triangle on its left, and then go into, double-click to open its C# file. And there's one small edit we need to make in this file to let it use transitions. So scroll down, scroll. It's actually a little tricky. This little gray rectangle is actually a lot of code concatenated into a nice box, because the designers assumed you're never going to edit this code block that often, and that's true, but we're going to need to edit this one. So open it, going to either double click on its block, or you could click the plus on the left there, but I'm just going to double click. And that opens up this new block of code. One edit we're going to make, where it says before phone application frame, we're going to actually name it a transition frame. And that allows the transitions to happen. And if Visual Studio gives you an error right now, that usually signifies that you don't have Windows Phone Toolkit installed. So if you don't, if you're having any issues, we can resolve that after. Update NuGet. Go to Visual Studio check for updates in Visual Studio, and it might suggest a new version of NuGet, and that will solve your problem in installing the Windows Phone Toolkit. All right. Step 2, transitions. We're going to go over to main page.xaml, scroll all the way to the top. I'm just going to make the designer a little smaller here so you can see the whole line. Actually, I'll just turn it off completely. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, good. Okay. What we're going to do up here is add an I'm not sure what you would call it, an attribute, an import that saves code that you will be typing soon. So we're going to make a new line there. And we'll preface this with XML NS. XML NS, I can't type properly. Colon, and then usually you'll see this written as toolkit, but I want to abbreviate it so we don't have to type it so many times. So I'll call it TK for toolkit. Then I'll give you a minute to type this down, but I don't want to type this down because I don't totally remember it and it's long. So I have it in Notepad over here. All it is this line. You're basically letting yourself, making it so you don't have to enter Microsoft Phone the controls every time you refer to the transitions in your example. So, if anyone does anyone need this to still be out there? Does anyone? Okay. So that's it. So copy that in. Now okay, sorry about that. Last step is to actually add the XAML that will provide the code necessary so that app will know where it needs to do this transition or not. And there are actually 4 cases that you're going to that a page in your app will need to know this is navigating into the page, navigating out from the page, and then inside those there's a backward and a forward attribute. So you need to account for all 4 of those facets of the transition, or else you will get a really wacky transition that will go halfway and then it'll just cut right to the end, like you saw before when it was just cutting really fast. So we're going to need to account for those. And that ends up translating to a lot of, in my opinion, it's a little tedious code that you don't want to keep typing around a lot. So I would make a reference for yourself. Save this as a code snippet, which maybe Justin knows how to do that. Or save it in a notepad file so you can easily copy it in. Anyways, I'm just have my reference over there. So we're going to start off. Let's do the navigation in transition. That gets called when the page is navigated to. So we're going to type transition service navigation in transition. Visual Studio is awesome. It generates the closing tag for you, so a lot of the typing here is safe. Then again, we are again specifying that this is the navigation in transition. Now these are the 2 cases inside navigation in transition that we need to account for. So we're going to do TK again, referring to toolkit, but TK can be whatever you want. You just have to keep typing that. To account for the backward transition, so we're going to do navigation in transition dot backward. Again, the closing tag is created for us. Then one more line, and this actually specifies what kind of transition you want. And you see we have turnstile, slide, rotate, roll, and turnstile feather, which I can explain after we do this. It's a pretty sweet effect. And I think the idea behind this one. So making a turnstile transition, giving it a mode. And the way to know what to do here, backward and backward out, forward and forward out, is go, like, think in your head, go back up. You're in the in transition, and you're specifying the backward aspect of that. So, backward in. And then, oops, close the tab with a forward slash and then the left-hand side. So then we're done with the in transition dot backward part. Let's do the forward part now. Navigation in transition dot forward. Again, it creates closing tag. And then we also want a turnstile transition on this too. Give it a mode. We want backward. No, sorry. Forward. Forward in, because this is the in transition and we're in the forward aspect of that transition. Close that. And that's it for the in part of the transition. So I'm just going to add some lines to block this out for you. This is the in. All y'all got to do is do the out aspect of that transition. So, okay. Oh, wrong place. Get out of the in transition so we can create an out transition. Sorry. Transition, service, navigation, out, transition. Here. We want to again specify that we are in the navigation out transition. Go back up. We're going to make now the backward and the forward aspect of that. And that'll be it for the transition for this page. So, transition backward. Another turnstile transition. We're going to want turnstile for all of these. Since this is an out, and it's also backward, inside the backward, we want it to be backward. Okay, I'm a silly person. Okay, never mind. Backward out. Okay. Thank you, Justin. Okay, so now we're doing the forward. The forward part of this transition. So again, navigation out transition done. Forward. And we want a turnstile transition with mode forward out, because we're in forward and we're inside the out transition. So that is it for this page's transition attributes. Now, conveniently, since we also want the same to happen on the other page, let's just copy all of this that we just wrote. The in and the out. Copy this up. Copy. And let's go over to page 1 sample file. So, I'm just opening up the code when we also paste this in right above the layout roots grid. Okay. And I've also forgot one thing, that I will also copy and paste from the other SAML file. That XMLNS TK line I copied from Notepad over there. So also add that as an attribute to the introduction to your SAML. And let me ask again, is anyone falling behind? Is anyone pace is okay? Okay. I assume so. Just don't say anything. Okay. And that should, crossing my fingers, add those smooth transition to the page navigation. So let's start the emulation and see if that works. Okay. Stop. Some stuff. next. And you saw, we just added that smooth and polished turnstile transition. If it were running on the real phone, it would look real nice. Now it only looks a little nice because it's running on the computer, so it's not that smooth. But we added transitions. And once you do that once, you can extend it to all of your pages by just copying and pasting that code. So, any questions about that? Okay. Last thing that's missing, we're going to add that rotate effect. And I can't remember if I explained this earlier, but that rotate effect is based on the length of the string, of the combined string that's passed to it. So if the string is longer, it will rotate even more. And if it's short, it will not rotate as much. That is pretty simple to do. I'll show you how to do it. So actually, it's on page 1.xaml because that's where our resulting navigation page is, the second page. I'm going to open up the designer again because I'm going to take a shortcut here and make Visual Studio generate code for me, which is always nice. Very appreciated feature. I wanted to generate the XAML for a rotate transform, but either I don't remember it, let's say, or I'm just too lazy and don't want to type it. So I'm just going to rotate it. It generated the XAML for that transform. But I don't want it to be permanently rotated like that, so I'm going to go in the XAML and put it back to 0, but keeping all the generated code that it made. The one thing I want to do, though, that's different from what it generated is make this a rotate transform instead of a composite. Composite combines different types of effects in one object. Well, rotate is just one thing, rotate. So the only one is rotate, so let's be efficient and just create a rotate object. Last thing, set this back to 0. Correct, thank you. Rotate transform does not have the rotation attribute. It has an angle attribute because all it does is change its rotation. So it was a little redundant to have a rotation attribute, so we get more specific, we call it angle. Then, I lied, it's the second to last thing I just did. Last thing is to give it an x:\name. And if you guys were here last week, but I'll explain it again. What you give for this attribute is the variable name that you want to refer to it as in your corresponding C# file. So we'll call it text rotate, something applicable to that. And that's it, and I can do this. So that's it for the XAML. That's all we need to do for rotation. Going to go over to page 1.xaml.cs, which is the corresponding C# file. And then we're going to add a little code to what Justin wrote in on navigated to. What we're going to do is, it's just one line. It's going to be, if you remember what the name that we gave to that rotate transform, it was text rotate, and it had the attribute angle. And what we're going to assign to that angle is the length of the combined string. And we actually have that combined string up above as a result, because of navigation context being there. So I'm going to assign to it the length of that combined string. So again, I'm going to copy Justin's line right. This, which gets that combined string from the previous page, and then get the length attribute of that string. So let's copy that, navigation context, query string, combine again, because we want the combine groups. Combine. Now what's different now is we want the length attribute. And there it is. For visuals' sake, I'm going to multiply it by 10 because we have a whole 360 degrees. So, and imagine like, you need to type 360 characters for it to actually turn all the way around. And you have to type 180 for it just to turn halfway amount. So let's like scale that factor up by 10 or 20. So I'll add 10. Should be enough. And now that should be it for the rotation. So let's start emulating. Type some stuff. So I'll type a really short string and then a really long string so you can see the difference in the rotations. R, and then it's up to RS. Okay, so then let's go to the next page. Okay, we can't even see it. Hold on. Let's make that a little bigger. Actually, why don't I just go back in the sample? Hold on. That's it. Interesting. I'm confused. Okay. Let me try that again. Sorry, guys. And we actually got a somewhat sloping rotation on that. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there it is up there. And RS is slanting to the right. Let's go back to Visual Studio, stop that thing, and I'll put in a larger string so you can see it translate. Although, never mind. I did not need to close the app just to press the back button. Sorry, guys. Yes, and let's just add a lot of characters. I couldn't find the string. Okay, next. So, moment of truth. It should rotate a lot. Oh, yeah. Nice. So, our rotate transform works. And if I'm not mistaken, that basically, what is it? Ah. Okay, right. I forgot about one thing. That one thing is clearing the text from those older fields that you had. So the fields that you typed into. So let's do that really quick because we'll have to leave. And yeah, so let's do that quick. Similarly to onNavigated to, there is another method called onNavigated from. You can imagine when that method is called. That happens when a page is when you cite an action to happen and the page gets flipped off the view instead of flipped onto. So that's actually very similar to the other one, and Visual Studio will actually suggest it for me, which is navigated from, generated everything. All we have to do here is clear the string. Okay. String 1 text box. Dot text. We're setting its text attribute, and then just simply an empty string. Just 2 quotations. 2 text box. Text. Same thing for the second text box that we had. And that's it. Let's run that. So now whatever we type into these boxes, it will get passed to the next page, but when we come back, they'll have disappeared. Okay, we got it. So now it's totally blank, it passed the blank string. Yeah, so That's about
Guys,
it.
you want to cover any of the cool stuff we saw from the Microsoft launch?
Absolutely. If that was not compelling enough for you, we have a couple videos of Nokia Ambassador Lance McCarthy's projects. And we actually went to a Nokia Develop Day. Justin and I and Habib and Jim from Microsoft was there. He gave a presentation on some aspects of Windows programming. It was all around a great experience. And we got to see some pretty great displays of what Windows Phone can do and what you can program for that. So let's go down. I'll start with the sonar one. This is quite cool.
So basically, what we've been trying to do today and the last event was trying to teach you guys how to get started with some of the Windows Phone development. That stuff, it might not be so fun. You guys learn how to work with the layout file, working with the C# and seeing how all that interacts. But after, once you do have these other cooler things that you want to do, that's all possible as well through APIs and other fancier things, which isn't so hard once you know what you do. So, here's some of those fancier things.
So, let me show you one of his pretty great demos. This demo exhibits wireless functionality. This is Bluetooth, and some good-looking controls that you can use. That I'm not sure if they're stock or they're part of the Windows Phone toolkit, but there's a cool graph that you'll see on the screen. Yeah, so I'll let him do the talking.
So here's my little experiment with sonar, Arduino, with the Bluetooth, a tricolor LED, and sonar rangefinder. On the Windows Phone, the app inches away. So we're going to connect on range.
All wirelessly with just something.
Beautiful, huh? But if I take it and just it's 4 inches around the tricolor chart there. So if I pick this up and move it around, all that data is going streaming over, not doing it.
So you can imagine all the cool applications you can do with that, with the Bluetooth. Then we have another one, we have the breathalyzer.
Yes.
So that's for all you kids out there who are not drinking at all or anything, but for everyone else, they can test their alcohol levels using Windows Phone applications.
This is another good example. Not only does it have a breathalyzer sensor, which I'm assuming he bought off some electronic site, sparkfun.com or something like that. It has even a servo motor that he can control with the phone. It's actually flip this lid up and down from his phone wirelessly. I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know what people do, but so anyways, let's watch it.
Okay, so here it is, breathalyzer. This is the blood alcohol sensor you breathe into, and the box will open and close. But let's take a look at it right. So breathalyzer. As you can see, in a box made out of aluminum. Connect to Bluetooth. We're connected. Slide over to servo control. We can set the angle. If the door is a little bit off, you can change the angle. Make sure you have the right side. So let's open her up. Hey!
Coolest part.
I'm sorry, you can see that now.
had some drunk people come in and test their alcohol levels, and it's pretty cool. Aside from that, I wanted Jim to talk a little bit about publishing. So basically, from what we learned today, as long as you are able to set up Visual Studio in the development environment, we have awesome prizes for those of you who are able to, create and publish Windows Phone 8 applications. So you can tell your friends about this, and you can do it yourself, and come to our office hours to get help. The contest is going to be for December 9th, and so that's the Monday after Thanksgiving. So that's the last Monday before final studying begins, and for those of you who are able to develop a Windows Phone 8 application and publish it to the store, or just make one, then you guys will get a prize. So, yeah.
Will it depend on how good the application is?
That all depends on you'll get something. You'll get something for sure. So yeah, obviously the better application, we have to have a winner, and the winner gets the best prize. So yeah, that's how that's going to work. And basically, the number one struggle is first, you got to install the environment, all the Windows Phone 8 SDK, and the Visual Studio. And if you need help on that, definitely stop by our office hours. And basically, then also, if you want to release the store, you can also do that. But in order to be eligible for this competition, you either have to have it on the store, you have to actually demo the application on our event December 9th at 6 p.m. or something to be decided. Yeah.
All right, so I'll try to be brief. It doesn't take too long to tell you how to do this. It takes a little bit longer to assemble all the assets that you need to actually publish in the store. So when you publish in the store, what that means is people with a Windows Phone device will be able to go to the store, search for your application, and it will show up. And it will show up with screenshots, it will show up with a description. So these are these things that you're going to have to pull together and set up before you actually go to the process of publishing. Now, one of the things you want to think about when you're publishing your application is the name, for instance. So the app that they've been working on up here has a default name, and you can see it show up on the phone as Pivot App 2. So you want to come up with a name that's kind of unique and catchy for the app. And you'll also notice that there's what we call a tile or an icon, and it's this sort of default sunburst. So that's something else you want to think of when you publish. You're not going to publish with a sunburst icon. You're going to publish with some sort of graphic that reflects your particular application. So come up with something that reflects your app, and you're going to want to essentially create that asset as a PNG file. Now, the other thing that you can do with Windows Phone apps is this is showing up in my list of all apps. So the other thing that you can do, is you can pin this to your start screen. So if this is a favorite app, you might want it to actually show up on the start screen so you can get right to it. So you see that same starburst there? So that's where you're going to want to put, again, another picture that reflects your application a little bit more closely. And this can actually be a couple different sizes. So it can be a small one, or a larger one, or even a much larger one if you've opted into it. The bottom line is there's at least 3 different pictures. They can all be the same picture, but you're going to have to provide that specific picture in the appropriate size before you can submit it to the store. And what you'll end up doing, this is all pretty well documented, so don't worry about trying to remember it all, is that you will go into a file here called the manifest. I think they've been into it a few times. The manifest file is where you would actually browse to those images. So that app icon, for instance, the one that shows up in the list of all apps, is there. It's that default starburst. The reason it's red is because the phone is set up to have a red theme. So if you set it up with a white image and no background, then it will always reflect the phone's theme. But you can set it up to just be a picture or something like that as well. And then, of course, you're going to set up not only the app icon, but those other 2 images. So the small image and the medium image are those tiles as they show up on the start screen. So each of those has a specific size. This is like 300 by 300. Let me see if it tells me which size this one is. It's pretty generous in terms of rescaling it, but there is a certain size that these are best shot at or best created with. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I can get them for you fairly easily, or you can see them as you submit to the store. Now, what you're going to have to do to submit to the store is you're going to have to create a profile of your application, and you do that on the website. So there is a website that you go to, and because you guys are all eligible for DreamSpark, you can all sign up for a free account on the Windows Phone Marketplace. So if you haven't done that yet, please reach out to Justin, Peter, or me, and we'll take care of it for you. We'll walk you through that process, but you get to it through DreamSpark. And what that allows you to do is log into the Development Center, which I've already done with my account. So this is just a website, dev.windowsphone.com, and allows me to go to my dashboard. So my dashboard is the place where all of the apps I've ever published exist. So I've published a couple. Actually, I've only published one, and I've got a couple that I just never seem to finish. Maybe if I'm eligible for the prizes on the 9th, maybe they'll encourage me to finish my other apps. But regardless, when you're ready to submit your application, you're just going to create a profile here. You'll say Submit App, and it's going to walk you through the process pretty straightforward way. It asks for app info, so you're going to give it a name. This is a name that you look at on your dashboard. So this isn't the name that appears on the app itself. That's part of what you set up in Visual Studio. So this app shows up on the start screen as Pivot App 2 because that's what they told it to show up as here. So whatever you put there is what will show up on the start screen. And what I put in my profile is just something that shows up inside of my dashboard. So I can pretty much call it anything I want. When people start looking for your application, they're going to look probably in different categories. So they might look under games, they might look under entertainment, or what have you. So the way the marketplace is set up, there are certain categories that you want to place your application into. So you have to pick one of these. You've got to pick the one that it's most appropriate for. If it's appropriate for two different ones, you just have to make a choice and figure out which one you want. So let's say this is a education app. Okay? Education doesn't have subcategories, but others will. So games will have different kinds of subcategories. So this again is just so people can find your application when they do a search. You can charge for your application. So you give it away free, which is typically what we suggest people do, especially for the first app. Or you can start charging for it if you want. So you can just do it at any of these levels, start at 99 cents or charge up to $500 for your app. And what that means is that when they go to pick the app, they will be charged, and you will get essentially 70% of the proceeds of the application. Microsoft keeps 30%, and that's the way Apple and Google Play work as well. So it's a 70-30 split. You can decide where you want to distribute your application to. So if you want to distribute it worldwide, which is a great idea because you get more users that way, then you can get distribute to all markets or to all markets except China. So China's called out because China has some pretty stringent requirements on the content, certain things you can and can't do with the app. Other countries have some as well. So if you can think of, some of the more conservative countries don't want different, alcohol references and those types of things in the application. So the button is specifically there for China because that's apparently the most stringent one. If you decide you don't want to distribute to a lot of countries, just a couple, we can fix that a little bit later. Okay. And then you can go down to more options. You will distribute it to the public store typically, and you will publish this automatically as soon as it's certified. There are some changes you can make here if you're running a beta program or something along those lines, so there's things you can look into. But by default, it'll go into the public store, everyone will see it, and it will go there as soon as Microsoft has certified it. When your app gets submitted, what Microsoft does, it runs through some tests, runs through some technical tests just to make sure it doesn't crash. And it also runs through some functionality tests. So they'll actually have people use your app and make sure that it looks done. So you don't want a screen that says, to be finished or, under construction. They will reject your app if it doesn't look complete. If there are functions that you want to add to your app later, but you're not quite ready, then just don't put them in. Because you can always republish your application over and over again and add new features. So what you put in the store should have some level of completeness and not imply that there's things missing. Once you set that up, and you just say to publish that same as soon as you get certified, the next step is to save, and simply upload your files. So what we have to do here is we have to actually upload the code. So the way you upload the code is you go into Visual Studio and you build the application, and they've actually been building it all along. You will typically build a release build because it doesn't have the debug information, so it will run faster. And you simply say build. Oops. And what this does is it creates the executable version of this application, and it will create it in a special place called bin directory release. And there's a bunch of files here. This last file, which you can probably see, XAP is the extension. XAP is a special extension that basically means this is a Windows Phone application that is in binary format that you're going to upload to be approved by the store. So all these other files you don't need. This is the only file it's asking for. So when it asks me on the web page for my application, what I'm going to do is essentially browse to that same directory, pull that file, and that will upload my code to Microsoft. And that is really almost all that I have to do. There's a few more things that you need to add in. So when you've done this, it will find out a lot of information automatically about your application because it can read that from that XAP file. And it will ask you for a few more things. So those things are really the description of your application. So it's determined that my application is targeting English language. It could be targeting multiple other languages as well. And if it were, then you would see those languages here, and you might write a page in German with German description, Spanish, and so on. Easy enough to just start with English. So you'll put the description, this is my really cool app, and this is what people are going to see. So you want to make this as compelling as possible, so that when they read the description, they'll be intrigued and want to download your app. You're going to want to put keywords in. So think about how you do searches for apps yourself. How are people going to look for your app? What keywords are they going to put in? They might put in social for social media, or they might be putting game or something like that. So think about what makes your application kind of unique and how you suspect people will search for it. Put those keywords in. You have to upload some images. So this image, this 300 by 300 image, is the same image that you use inside the application, the Starburst. So that's going to be an icon that's going to appear on the page. When somebody looks on the Windows Phone Store, they're going to see that icon. And you can provide another image that's larger, and that's up to you if you want to provide this. Windows Store and Windows Phone Store will seek out interesting new applications, and they will promote them. So in order to be promoted and to show up on its promotion page, you have to have an image that's this big, okay, 1,000 by 800. Now, if you don't have this image, this is surely going to mean you're never going to be promoted. Just because you have the image doesn't mean you'll be promoted, but you will actually at least be considered at some point. It's all going to depend on what promotions they're running, what types of apps they're looking for. It actually varies with holidays as well. So now you're going to see them promoting a lot of like food kind of apps, food and wine apps, because everybody's doing entertaining and so on. So that's what the background image is. Then the other thing you're going to have to do is provide screenshots. So people want to see what your app looks like while it's running. So when they go to the store, they're going to see between 1 and 8 screenshots of the application in progress. So you have to provide those screenshots here, upload them as files. Now you can get screenshots a couple different ways. If you actually have a device, you can get the screenshot just by pressing the power button and the Windows button at the same time, or power button and the Windows button at the same time. You can actually get them inside of the emulator as well. And you're not going to remember this, but I just want you to remember that you can get them in the emulator. And the way you do that is through this emulator application, for instance. And I wanted to provide a screenshot for my store page. I can just say capture, and there's the screenshot, and then I can save it. And I won't do this, but I can save it to the file system, and then I can upload it over here. Okay. So you do want screenshots. You want the screenshots to be compelling as well. Think about how you guys make decisions to get an app or not. You want to pick ones that look cool. And once you do all that, I can't do that because I can't continue because I don't have everything. But you'll hit save, and your application will be ready to go. And what you'll see at the bottom, you won't see it here because I haven't filled all the prerequisites. Well, you'll see I got disconnected. Let's try that again. All right, maybe we're. That says we're connected. No, it says we're not connected. All right. So we brought the
I'm
network.
pretty sure most people should be able to.
Yeah, they can figure it out.
Yeah.
So once you get that set up, upload your code, description, screenshots. There'll be a button that says submit. You'll get an email that says thank you for your submission. A couple days later, you'll get basically, hopefully, an approval message. If not, you'll get lots of feedback that says you need to work on this.
Awesome. Do you know about the holiday season? The $50.
Yeah, so that I double checked in the back on my phone. That applies to Windows 8 development, not to Windows Phone development. So I didn't really confuse the issue with that.
Okay.
What I will leave one other site that you guys might want to look at, especially in terms of entering like a contest or something along that line, or wanting to get a head start, sort of get an app up and running, and then maybe then take a look at it under the covers. So everything that Peter and Justin did really showed you how to build an app, but they start from scratch, right? There are a lot of examples out there. You don't have to start from scratch. It's great to start from scratch because then you know how it works. Once you know how it works, you want something that saves you time. So one place I'd like you guys to look at is app. I think it's app. If I had the website, if I had the Windows store.com, and the thing is called App Studio.
Maybe we should have Jim take a breathalyzer.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, it's not my keyboard that I can't do it very well. Hopefully, you guys can see that. Go to app.windowsstore.com. What this will allow you to do, sort of walk through a process, and you'll get a Windows Phone app out the other end, and then you can take that code and customize it yourself. So it's a different way of approaching the problem. But you'll be armed with the knowledge of how that app is put together based on what Justin and Peter have done, and you'll be better equipped to make that your own.
The great thing about Microsoft and Windows development in general is that they try to help you, and they try to incentivize this. There's always something. There are always people that help you online, and the community is great. And even here at Boston University, we have 2 dedicated instructors who are holding office hours for Windows development. As well as online, there are a lot of resources, and Jim is definitely available to contact if you ever need any help with publishing or getting started, getting your environment set up. And I'm sure that you guys will be able to work out some of those issues and enjoy the challenges that present themselves when you're trying to create your very own application. So I hope you guys have what you need to get started, and if not, please approach us later and ask us whatever it is that you need to know to get Visual Studio and everything set up. Thank you all for coming. I hope you guys build that Windows Phone 8 application. Yeah, have a great night.
I'll add one more thing. So my general rule is, you're not bothering me, ever, but if you're spending more than 15 minutes to try to figure something out, send me an email. All right. Thanks a lot.
It's for you guys.